Good afternoon, fellow Patriots. This is Matt Shea, and welcome to Patriot Radio, broadcasting live from the capital of free Washington and soon-to-be Liberty State, Spokane Valley, brought to you once again by the Committee to Elect Matt Shea, Republican, in the legacy of Dr. Stan Monteith, bringing you the story behind the story and the news behind the news. And once again, it's not about right or left. It's about right and wrong. It's about our hope being not in man, but in Jesus Christ. It's about not ending in prayer, but also moving to action. And it's about Ephesians 2:5-6, that God made us alive together with Christ and raised us up with him and seated us with him in heavenly places in Christ Jesus. We have a lot to talk about. I want you to pay attention on the show today, especially when I get to the Middle East portion. Larry Klayman is our guest today, and should be coming here on the air in about 25 minutes or so. And I really appreciate if everybody would pay attention to some of the things he's going to have to say, especially about what happened to President Donald Trump and his lawyer this morning. If you haven't heard, we'll get to that here in a second. But there are some very serious things happening right now in the Mediterranean. I don't know of a lot of people reporting in depth on this, but I've got some very in-depth information that I want to share with you. And please, if you're a praying person, and I hope you are if you're listening to ACN, that you take up some prayer about what's happening in the Middle East, what's happening in the Trump presidency right now. And we together, as patriots, can stick together. I have a lot of, I'm not anxious, but I have a lot of concern that things are beginning to really spiral suddenly out of control. But we have to keep the balance. You know, we had General Walla on. It was pretty clear that some of the things, you know, are overblown in the media. The stuff I'm going to be talking about to you today is coming from direct sources that have information on this stuff, and a lot of it is already open source anyways. But bottom line is we're going to have to get to it right now. But first, in times of crisis like this, I want to reread what I talked about last Thursday. It's a quote from A.W. Tozer, God and Men. Okay, quote, "The church at this moment needs men, the right kind of men, bold men. We languish for men who feel themselves expendable in the warfare of the soul, who cannot be frightened by the threats of death because they have already died to the allurements of this world. Such men will be free from the compulsions that control weaker men. They will not be forced to do things by the squeeze of circumstances. Their only compulsion will come from within or from above. This kind of freedom is necessary if we are to have prophets in our pulpits again, instead of mascots," end quote. And in particular, I want to talk about the right to bear arms, a God-given, unalienable right, a right protected by the Second Amendment to the U.S. Constitution and by Article 1, Section 24 of the Washington State Constitution, which says that the right to bear arms shall not be impaired. If someone is advocating banning AR-15s, and just as a side note, a friend of mine, I think it was Representative Dave Taylor, actually asked a liberal, what does AR stand for? And they said assault rifle. No, Armalite actually, but nice try. See, they don't even know what they're talking about. They're just following blindly their agenda. But if there are people out there that are advocating banning AR-15s, they are in a state of rebellion against the Constitution. The reason we have AR-15s is for exactly the moment that you would advocate that they be banned. That's why it exists. And so what these people really are is in rebellion to the Constitution and advocating civil war. That's what they are doing. James Madison in 1788 said this, quote, "Besides the advantage of being armed, which the Americans possess over the people of almost every other nation." Now, that still holds true today, by the way. "The existence of subordinate governments to which the people are attached and by which the militia officers are appointed forms a barrier against the enterprises of ambition more insurmountable than any which a simple government of any form can admit of." In other words, the right to bear arms, especially at the local level, is a check against tyranny and ambitious men. And so a really cute meme that I saw out there, hilarious actually, says my AR-15 self-identifies as a musket, right? Because here's the point, and somebody brought this up, I totally agree with this idea. Okay, if you're saying that the Second Amendment only applied to muskets, okay, then you're saying the First Amendment only applied to rough together paper, quill pens, ink and bottles, and horses that deliver the mail. Doesn't make sense, because what the founders tried to enshrine were truths that they found when they researched Greek history and Roman history, modern European history, Anglo-Saxon history. That's what they were trying to enshrine, was a truth, and a truth that was immutable. It doesn't ever change. And this idea of being armed prevents tyranny and, quite honestly, prevents genocide. And if you go anywhere else in the world and you see a portion of a population disarmed, generally speaking, they're oppressed, and in the worst cases, they're being slaughtered. So as men, as Christian men, this is a line for us. When somebody says they are going to come and confiscate our ability to protect our family and our ability to live free, they are saying, are you willing to die for freedom? Are you willing to fight and die for freedom? That's what they're saying logically. And the question for us inside is, are we willing to fight and die for freedom? Truly, are we? What is our answer to that as Christians? Because the world is an ugly place, especially outside the United States of America. And are we prepared to not just talk about these things? Are we prepared to think about them at a very deep level and understand that there is a portion of people in America that are advocating the overthrow of the Constitution? That is their agenda. That is their stated goals and aims. And what are we willing to do to defend that? Are we willing to do the simple things? Get off the couch and vote. Show up in Olympia. Show up and testify. Write letters. Write emails. Visit with our elected officials. Are we willing to do those simple things and embolden them to stop this craziness that's out there? And if necessary, as a total last resort, are we willing to defend our freedoms with our lives? Some people might think that's a scary thing, but folks, that's where this stuff is headed. Logically, that's where it's headed. Historically, that's where it's headed. That's why the Founding Fathers said the right to bear arms is so critical. One thing they all agreed on. And it was interesting, even the pacifists, even the pacifists realized that kind of overwhelming tyranny could only be defended against with a force of arms. It was an interesting quandary for them. And as we move forward in this chaotic time, we need to pray for God's wisdom because He knows the way forward. And that brings us now to your daily intelligence briefing on the international front. In the Middle East, French forces and Marines head north to take up positions opposite the Turkish army in Afrin. In addition to that, and this is coming from sources about the rest of Syria, and I want to read a couple of quotes real quick. Apparently, the Black Sea Fleet has been spun up to combat alert. There is talk out there on several open sources that CENTCOM may go to DEFCON 3. It's also being reported that Trump has canceled all his trips and plans. And in addition to that, and I've got a map up here, and I'm going to try to paint this picture for you. In the Mediterranean right now, the Russian Navy is faced off in the Mediterranean. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 ships on one side, and about the same on the other as far as U.S., British, French, and German forces are literally faced off right now in the Mediterranean, off the coast of Syria. Addition to that, from the Express in the United Kingdom, they are reporting, quote, a Syria missile strike is within hours by British and French forces. This would include air-to-ground cruise missiles. There's been a rapid alert notification warning aircraft that has been deployed into the eastern Mediterranean. You've got many people saying that this may happen within 72 hours. Folks, this is a really, really, really tense time. Now, as General Valley said that there might be a summit in the offing, and General Valley said that he was the one that put together the last summit between Putin and Trump. And with things that tense, that may just happen. Now, ostensibly, this is all over this chemical weapons attack that supposedly occurred in Syria against innocent civilians. Now, some people are questioning the veracity of that because about a month ago, several people came out and said that there was this false flag chemical attack in the offing. This was 30 days ago this happened. And so some people are questioning, is this legit, or are there forces over there in Syria trying to gin up a war between the U.S. and Russia? And we need to pray that cooler heads would prevail. But right now, these warships that are U.S., British, French warships and German warships that are facing off with the Russians in the Mediterranean is making this extremely tense. And if you see a cruise missile strike occur, then we're going to see a possible Russian retaliation, according to Vladimir Putin. Also on the international front, China, while they've eased up on the tariff war and the market is up 425 points today, a U.S. aircraft carrier group and a Chinese aircraft carrier group, you heard that right, are facing off in the South China Sea right now. This coming to us from the Daily Mail. The Roosevelt Strike Group includes a guided missile cruiser and a guided missile destroyer, and they have just moved into the South China Sea, where right now China is deploying its aircraft carrier and escorting warships near Hainan Island. So a flashpoint there, but probably not the thing to pay attention to right now. Probably the Mediterranean is the big issue. And again, will Putin and Trump meet at a summit? I don't know. In addition to that, on the national front, the raid on Trump's lawyer occurring now. I got to tell you something. Very likely, and this is, there are a couple articles out there right now on this, but very likely there is a violation of attorney-client privilege, because if you raid a lawyer's office, there is a very high likelihood that you're going to come across attorney-client privilege documents. And so Michael Cohen's hotel room and office were raided by the FBI. This is Trump's lawyer. Now, I mean, it's a very serious matter, because I think it is fair to say that his presidency now is officially under siege. I mean, we knew that they were being hit at by both sides, but officially it's now under siege. And if Mueller's willing to violate the Fourth Amendment, willing to violate attorney-client privilege, it has to raise the question: what else are they willing to violate? I mean, this is the President of the United States. So we're going to be talking about that with Larry Klayman here in a few minutes, and I hope you stick around for that. Also on the national front, sales up as several jurisdictions across the United States have advocated not just banning so-called assault rifles, but also saying that if you do not turn them in, render them unworkable in the next 60 days, that there's going to be confiscation. It's happening in America, folks. And what's a little even, I guess, more shocking is that they're also now going after the First Amendment in California. There is a bill that's been introduced by a state senator in California. It's coming to us from WorldNet Daily, where they want to have fact checkers approve the news before it's published. This coming from a Democrat state senator in California. Now, the fact it's coming out of California probably doesn't shock a lot of people, but the bill is titled the Internet Social Media False Information Strategic Plan, and it is Senate Bill 1424 in California. It would require people to develop a strategic plan to verify news stories shared on internet websites. I mean, this is killing. This would be the death of free speech. So not only are they attacking the right to bear arms, now they're attacking free speech, because, of course, these fact checkers would have to be approved by the beneficent Democrats, and they would make sure that your news is good before it's published. You know what this sounds like? Pravda under the Soviet Union. Pravda, by the way, is the Russian word for truth, and everybody mocked it because it was never true, or very rarely true. I mean, this is unreal, folks. Absolutely unreal. I'm going to post this up on the Facebook page so everybody can take a look at this. It's unbelievable. You can't make this stuff up. On top of that, on the national front, Jim Rickards saying that the International Monetary Fund is thinking about, at the end of April, early May timeframe, of introducing a digital version of the strategic drawing rights, or the basket of currencies, as a cryptocurrency or world currency for nations to settle up. That means that the U.S. dollar, the petrodollar, would no longer be used, or would less and less be used, which would have a dramatic impact on our economy. Now, it's interesting that they would do this in an election year as well. But Jim Rickards, very well known for calling things before they happen in the economic world, an economic analyst that worked with the Central Intelligence Agency. So he has a lot of credibility bringing this forward, something I think we need to keep our eyes on. And then lastly, bringing up the issue, do we really have any privacy anymore? Rogue spy devices now being found in Washington, D.C. They're using these Stingray devices now against the government. Apparently somebody is. But do we really have any privacy anymore? With Facebook and the revelations there that they were listening to people through their application. Now, we talked about this in the show years ago. People said, it'll never happen. It's not true. It's just a bunch of conspiracy theory. We know it's interesting that all of these things are coming true now. So if you've been right all the time, like the New American Magazine and others, probably should start listening to them. Probably should start listening to the people that said, yeah, that was going to happen, and it happened. And how do we take back our privacy? And I talked about a few things you can do at the end of the last show, and I would strongly urge everybody to do that. Really take the time and reclaim your privacy. Go to Gab, go to MeWe. Use those as social media sites. Use encrypted text messaging and calling that's free out there. Signal app, Wire, others. Use encrypted email, Proton Mail, Unseen Mail, Start Mail. There's a bunch of others out there too. And take back your privacy. And all those people say, I don't have anything to hide. It's not about that. It's about the integrity of the system. It's about freedom. It's about denying them the ability to easily get a hold of your personal information. So pay attention to that part of it. All right, on the local front, got a bunch of events coming up. Red Pill Expo coming to Spokane to the Convention Center, June 21st through 23rd. A huge list of speakers. You can go onto Red Pill Expo's website and check out the speakers. Yours truly will be there as well, speaking. Also coming up, the Freedom Project with Dr. Duke Pesta, talking about the crisis in American education, coming on May 5th, 3 o'clock to Center Place in Spokane Valley. Free admission. Everybody's welcome to go there. A lot of room. So again, Freedom Project about the crisis in American education. Now Dr. Duke Pesta, we've had on the show before, a great source regarding homeschooling and private schooling. But he's going to be talking about the solutions, not just what the problem is. I think everybody probably wants to hear that. Again, May 5th, 3 o'clock, Center Place in Spokane Valley. Also have the March for Our Rights, and in particular the right to bear arms, Saturday in Spokane at Franklin Park, 11 o'clock on April 21st. So coming up a little over a week from now, 11 o'clock, April 21st, Franklin Park, March for Our Rights. Look forward to seeing everybody there as well. April 16th, A Great State, the latest in the 299 Days universe, coming out. We're going to have Shelby Gallagher, the author of A Great State, coming on the show, I believe, on either Thursday or next Tuesday. Then lastly, Liberty Academy has a special presentation on capitalism. Is it moral? This weekend, April 14th, 9:30 a.m. at Templin's in Post Falls. Templin's Resort in Post Falls, 9:30 a.m. Again, a great lineup of speakers that are going to be there talking about our economy and our economic system. And that's the briefing. Remember, the antidote to dependency and socialism is to be a God-fearing, self-reliant, freedom-loving American. Thank you to everybody that's been praying for me and the show. Go to Facebook/Patriot Radio US, like the page, share it with your friends and family. And if you get a chance, you can always go to voteshea.com. Keep us on the air and keep the message of freedom and liberty broadcasting throughout eastern Washington, northeast Oregon, and northern Idaho, and parts beyond on iTunes and Podbean. Well, again, my guest today is Larry Klayman, the founder of Judicial Watch and Freedom Watch. And I want to mention one thing that I found very curious. The Southern Poverty Law Center calls him a pathologically litigious attorney and professional gadfly notorious for suing everyone from Iran's supreme leader to his own mother. Now, if the Southern Poverty Law Center has that kind of endorsement for him, that's our kind of guy here for Patriot Radio. So, Larry Klayman, thank you very much for joining me on Patriot Radio today.
You're welcome. Yeah, it's like being called ugly by a frog, right? the old
Right,
expression.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I made the Southern Poverty Law Center's Dirty Dozen list, so it's good company. I love it. So anyway, thank you for everything you're doing.
You're welcome. They are a despicable bunch, that's for sure.
No question about it. Well, I want to talk real quick. I mean, this is what's on everybody's minds right now, is this raid on Trump's lawyer. What are your thoughts on this? I mean, how is Mueller getting away with this? Attorney-client privilege seems to be a thing of the past now, if you can raid the president's lawyer like that.
Well, absolutely, it's a thing of the past. 2 years ago, actually it was 4 years ago, I joined the National Security Agency. I sued as a plaintiff because they were getting, along with hundreds of millions of Americans, my communications with clients. And we won that case in a preliminary injunction, 2 of them, in fact, which resulted in a change in the law. And there's absolutely no privacy in any event because the government does not obey the law. And when I say the government, the so-called Obama, Clinton, deep state. Now, with regard to what's going on with Michael Cohen, the lawyer, I mean, it's not only outrageous, it not only violates his constitutional rights, but I want to know what judge signed the warrant that allowed this, because it's an unbelievable outrage. It's a direct attack on the President of the United States. He should have fired Mueller a long time ago. He should not worry about the political consequences of that. He should fire Attorney General Jeff Sessions, who obviously had to give his approval for this, as well as Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, an Obama holdover, former U.S. Attorney from Maryland. And it's time that the President not take the advice of his inert and, in my view, incompetent lawyers around him, not Michael Cohen, but the ones that have been defending him with Mueller, because they just get dragged along and along and along. And it's like a bad Hollywood movie that's going to end in tragedy unless some action is taken. Now, we have at Freedom Watch, and you can see that at freedomwatchusa.org. I hope people will go to it, sign the petition, because we filed lawsuits to get Mueller removed. We filed lawsuits to have Sessions removed, in effect. That's freedomwatchusa.org. We're taking action, but the president should be taking action himself, and he should not wait for judges to make rulings in our cases, as important as they are. And he can't worry about political correctness. He can't worry about whether he's going to wind up getting impeached. He'll never be convicted in the Senate. He takes 2/3 vote. The Republicans aren't suicidal. And he should just do what needs to be done, and he won't have to leave office because now he has a great excuse to fire Mueller. The guy's even going after his own lawyer, President Trump's lawyer, and violating attorney-client confidences. And they're not. It's wrong. I was listening to Judge Napolitano of Fox News earlier today. He says, well, it's just about the porn star, Stormy Daniels. It's not about that. That's the pretext. It's about destroying the President of the United States. And what could be more threatening than to subpoena all the not even subpoena, but go in a search warrant and do raids at Michael Cohen's office, at his home, and his apartment. We live in a Soviet-style KGB state today, and that's why we fight so hard at Freedom Watch to try to maintain our freedoms and liberties.
And I don't think that's an understatement at all, or overstatement. I think that the problem that we have right now is that, okay, he went in, he raided, now they have possession of these documents, and now they're supposed to be trusted not to reveal attorney-client confidences. Like, that's going to happen. Like, some of these materials might not end up being leaked to the media. I mean, what can President Trump do? I agree with you. I believe the first step is he should fire Mueller. He should get rid of him right now, because I don't think it's worth it having him there anymore. He's clearly not objective in what he's doing. But what else can Trump do?
Well, he can push back. I mean, he can have Mueller investigated. I think Mueller should be prosecuted. I know he's been leaking grand jury material. That's a crime. Every day there's a leak from his leftist prosecutors. No one does anything about it. I've written letters to the chief judge of the federal court in D.C. and Virginia, where there are grand juries, in New York, and they do nothing. I have filed complaints to force the Office of Professional Responsibility, Inspector General of the Justice Department, to conduct an investigation and to order that Mueller be removed. Those are in progress. But the president needs to start pushing back himself, and he has the authority to demand. He sits over Attorney General Jeff Sessions. If he makes a decision for the Justice Department, that has to be obeyed. And frankly, Sessions should have to resign or either be fired too. I mean, he's scared of his shadow. He's under investigation by Mueller for alleged collusion with the Russians and alleged obstruction of justice, all of which are trumped-up charges. But he's so reflexive, he doesn't want to push on Mueller or the Democrats, and he buries his head in the sand. So the president has to clean house, and it's not just for him. It's for the entire country, which is living under, like I said, a KGB Soviet-style police state with huge powers by the deep state actors in the intelligence agencies that from day one, and that includes the FBI, have been out to destroy this president and take away our vote and take away our chance to make America great again. And I'll tell you something, if Trump goes down, the next president is going to be 100 times worse than Clinton and Obama. It's going to be just really terrible. And the bottom line here is to add insult to injury. Even the Republican establishment would like to see Trump go down. They want to run their establishment candidate against the Democrats in 2020. So he has nobody but himself and yours truly and people like you stand up for him. But the Democrat and the Republican establishments, of which Mueller is a creation, a creature, want to destroy the president. And the fact that they've now gone after his lawyer in this way by conducting raids on his office, on his apartment, on his home, as they did with regard to Paul Manafort, former campaign manager of President Trump during his presidential campaign, shows you that this is a blood sport, that they're out to slit the president's throat. And that's why I do urge people to go to our website, freedomwatchusa.org, freedomwatchusa.org. Please contribute to us. We need to ramp up and sign the petition. We need 100,000 signatures, and I want to deliver it to President Trump and say, look, now's the time, really, with all due respect, because I really love the guy, put up or shut up, Mr. President. Don't go along with these lawyers of yours that are part of the establishment that don't want to make waves because they're worried that it'll be blowback towards them. And that's what it's about.
There's no question. And I believe, too, that if he doesn't do something now, I mean, he's only going to embolden them. They're only going to get worse. And I agree with you. I don't think they would have the votes to impeach him. But I do believe they're going to try to put so much pressure on him that he would resign, or maybe his cabinet would turn against him. And I don't think people understand that this really is forming up to be a coup d'etat by the deep state. I think that is not too strong a word to use for this. From your perspective, Jeff Sessions has been so quiet, and I agree with you. He seems to be afraid of his shadow. What should he be doing right now to mitigate what's going on? Because, you know, if it's just Trump by himself, people are going to say, well, he's doing it because of self-interest. Sessions
should himself fire Mueller. He should fire Mueller. But he's not. He's actually working with Mueller. And that's what's because of his own skin. You see, that's the thing about most lawyers, not me. Okay, maybe a few others in this country. I can't think of many. Judge Royce Lamberth, who, you know, I've gotten to know as a friend over the years, who made so many good rulings for me when I was running Judicial Watch against the Clintons. He'll stick his neck out. He'll do what he thinks is right. But frankly, between this judge and Larry Klayman, there are no other lawyers that will do that because they put their own self-interest ahead of their clients, particularly in this kind of a situation where the intelligence agencies and the FBI can destroy them. And Sessions is afraid of the blowback because he's very vulnerable. He did perjure himself in front of Congress. It was not material perjury in the sense that there was anything wrong with having met with a Russian ambassador, but he lied about that. He was under investigation by Andrew McCabe, deputy FBI director, for that. He knows that the FBI and the Justice Department were looking at that. He knows that Mueller is looking at whether, when he was a member of the Trump campaign and the transition, whether he so-called colluded with the Russians. And frankly, there's nothing wrong with collusion. We know that. It's not a crime. And he knows that he's under investigation for the obstruction of justice that was alleged in the firing of Comey because he consulted with the president over that firing. So did Rosenstein, his deputy. So he feels like he has to, frankly, kiss the rear end of Mueller and the Democrats to avoid himself getting impeached or being indicted for something. And that's an untenable situation. It's a betrayal to the American people. He has no business being there. It's all about himself. It's not about the country. And at one time, I thought he was a decent human being. But, you know, and everybody says, oh, he's a nice guy. Well, nice guys don't further this kind of conduct. He's not a nice guy, and he should be basically shown the door at the Justice Department. If he wants to be a lobbyist on K Street, that maybe should be his next profession, because basically he's slithering around at the Justice Department like a slimy snake, sticking the knife in the back of the president that made him Attorney General.
Well, it looks like that the Russian collusion thing gets totally crushed, totally debunked. And then, because they've run out of things to attack the president on, they have to raid this office to find more things. It would seem like with all the revelations that have come out, with the NSA spying on our president, with the misuse of the presidential daily intelligence brief, and all the other things that have occurred, that Attorney General Sessions could do something to stop all that and at least investigate the bad actors inside the government. You'd think that's what an AG should do. Absolutely, and that's why you have an Office of Professional Responsibility, an Inspector General that works under him. But more importantly than that, we need another special counsel, and that's why I say people go to the website. I'm not promoting myself, but no one else will do this. I honestly believe that in my heart. No one else will take the risk. But I have a petition up there to have me named special counsel, a second special counsel. Go to that, freedomwatchusa.org. Please sign that. Support us. I'll get the job done. I'll clean it out. I'll have all the powers of the Justice Department. I'm a former Justice Department prosecutor. You know, I know how to use those powers. And we need not just to investigate, but people need to be indicted. Mueller should be indicted for the criminal leaks. Rosenstein should be indicted for his obstruction of justice. You've got Hillary Clinton. You've got Bill Clinton. You've got James Comey. You've got Loretta Lynch. You've got Eric Holder. You've got John Brennan, former director of CIA under Barack Obama. You've got James Clapper, who perjured himself twice under oath and said there wasn't mass surveillance being conducted against the American people. All of these people are out to destroy the president. They need to be put before a grand jury. We need to seek indictments. We need to convict them. We need to throw them in prison where they belong. And we need to set an example. You know, we delude ourselves in this country into thinking that we're holier than thou, that we have the most just justice system in the world. In fact, we're far from that. We're little better than a banana republic. Even Brazil takes actions against their political elite. Israel certainly is. They're looking at Prime Minister Netanyahu right now. That may be a witch hunt too, but they're doing it, and they're doing it independently. In this country, we let these people go. You know, and this is the irony here. I've got a Newsmax article running right now. You can find it at freedomwatchusa.org or go to Klayman's court, Klayman court at Newsmax. You know, we've been lied to all these years about Hillary Clinton's 33,000 email. Oh, they're destroyed. They can't be found. Well, we know that the NSA keeps email from everyone for 5 years. They have the supercomputer in Utah. We know that. We know that through Edward Snowden. We know that through whistleblowers that I've represented. It's not in dispute. Whereas you can raid the office of the president's lawyer, but not even serve a subpoena on the NSA to get these documents, if you're the Justice Department or the FBI, shows you just how corrupt and dishonest and how broken our justice system is. And that's why I do what I do. That's what keeps me going, because I become the anti-lawyer. I'm the anti-justice. I'm the pro-Justice Department and Freedom Watch, but this Justice Department does not represent the American people. It represents the elite in Washington, and it represents itself. And it is no better than the court of King James under King George III, who took our criminal justice system back to London and terrorized the colonies. And that's why we had a revolution. And that's why we're bound to have another one. I don't want to see violence or bloodshed, but I think it's going to come to that. I want to advocate it. But I think people at some point are going to be in the streets. If this president goes down, at least half the country is going to be more than upset. You're going to see militias out there in the streets. They're going to be heavily armed, and it's going to be the beginning of a bloodbath. And I don't want to see that. And that's why this president needs to take action. And he needs to clean it out right now, and we're doing what we can at Freedom Watch. You can go to freedomwatchusa.org. Please join our citizen army, our peaceful citizen army. Well, let's talk a little bit about the Bundy situation. It was right here on Patriot Radio that we actually broke before anybody else. We broke the Larry Wooten memo right before Judge Navarro had to rule on whether to dismiss with prejudice. It was an enormous deal to try to do that and get the message out in all the different ways we can without getting slammed by some of the big social media companies. But what was interesting to me was how corrupt and the allegations were so outrageous that you would think somebody would be prosecuted over it, i.e. Special Agent in Charge Dan Love, for having a kill book, for bragging about driving 3 people to suicide according to the Wooten memo, for sniper rifles being pointed at innocent American citizens, for withholding exculpatory evidence, and on and on and on. What's your take on the Bundy situation, and how can we help? Because they're now trying to get the judge to reconsider. How can we help justice to be done down there?
The Bundy situation, that's really important that you raise that, because what happened to the Bundys, Klayman was my client, I assisted Ryan, the family, is what's happening to the president. And there's no bounds. And it's not just Special Agent Love, who ultimately was found to have been extorting and blackmailing people at the Burning Man event while he was a top agent for BLM and was drummed out of BLM. He should be indicted and prosecuted. But you had this whistleblower, Larry Wooten, that you pointed out came forward, that talked about how there were kill lists and how the acting U.S. attorney in Nevada covered everything up and actually had him sent off to Siberia so he couldn't implicate anyone, a complete cover-up. This Justice Department has become so corrupt to the core with its FBI that it is a force working against the American people, and it's a rat's nest that needs to be cleared out. And I saw, stuff when I was a justice lawyer that troubled me. I saw people on the right side of the street not being prosecuted, those on the wrong side being prosecuted, not the ones on the wrong side being prosecuted. And that's why ultimately I founded Judicial Watch in 1994, and then having run for the U.S. Senate in Florida, not having won, I started Freedom Watch after that. So we're in a crisis mode, and the Bundys are one example. I mean, they're maybe the worst example short of the president of what's going on. And it's just a world that we would never believe. And you can walk around, and have a good time. And, if you live in California, walk down the street and marijuana fumes everywhere, and people are high. They don't know what's going on, and many other states too. And we live in a dream world. It's a dream world. This country's collapsing really quickly. And if you don't have a rule of law, if you don't have equal justice under the law, if you don't have what John Adams said, a nation of laws and not men, then you have no nation at all.
Do you think that eventually the second, well, actually, technically, I guess it's the third, but this latest Wooten email that was part of this reconsideration down in Nevada will be ever brought to the light of day?
It's unlikely. Here's what happened. Again, if I may toot my own horn a little bit, very few people are willing to say what happened or even understand it. Judge Navarro, who sat over the Bundy trials, is the hand-picked political hack of Harry Reid, the former senator from Nevada. Harry Reid was trying to sell the land out from under the Bundys and other ranchers to Chinese environmental interests. That's what this is about at the foundation. They used ridiculous environmental regulations, the Bureau of Land Management, the fact that Klayman withheld paying grazing fees, which was no reason to come in and threaten the life of his family. They weren't legally due, and there's a very good argument to be made to that effect, which we're making in court now. And it was about Harry Reid. And who did Harry Reid put in by having Obama appoint him as the head of the Bureau of Land Management, a guy named Neil Cornsey? So since what Wooten revealed primarily was massive corruption at Bureau of Land Management, working in concert with the FBI and with the U.S. Attorney's Office in Nevada and Las Vegas, I believe that Navarro dismissed this case so Wooten would never be called as a witness to testify as to what he had written in an email and what he had sent to the Justice Department where it's been buried ever since. And it was to protect Harry Reid, her benefactor, and also Obama, who had her appointed. And she knows that if she gores the ox of her own benefactor, and Harry Reid's like the Wizard of Oz, he's still out there behind the curtain with a lot of power in the Democratic Party. And if she does anything to harm him, she will never, ever go to perhaps the appellate court. I think she would probably like to sit on the Ninth Circuit. Since she's Latina and a female, she'd be the candidate to be a Supreme Court justice if there's a Democrat administration, because they want to get minorities up there. And that's why she has not allowed Larry Wooten to come forward and testify under oath. Now, the acting U.S. attorney, Stephen Myray, and this shows you also the corruption of the Justice Department, because after all this gross prosecutorial misconduct came out, Sessions finally, after I lobbied him for a year, and where there was no response, even though I talked to him and he promised me he'd review the Bundy case independently and fairly, he then finally announced that he was going to conduct a review. But no sooner than a few weeks later, Myray, the acting U.S. attorney, now he's been demoted, files a motion for reconsideration with his corrupt prosecutorial staff and asks for the dismissal to be overturned. Now, how can Sessions say he's conducting a review and at the same time have his prosecutors ask the Judge Navarro to pull back her decision? So Ryan Bundy actually prepared it for him, a motion saying, Your Honor, you can't even consider this request, which is totally inappropriate and non-meritorious, without bringing in Larry Wooten to testify first. Because if you think the prosecutorial misconduct that came out before we learned of Larry Wooten was bad, then we need to have this guy testify under oath, because that'll shut the lid on any thought that this superseding indictment will be reinstituted and the prosecution continue. So this is the way it works. This is why when you watch Fox News, for the most part, it's very naive people. I like Fox. I mean, thank God they exist. But you get everything watered down. People don't tell you the truth because they're worried about offending the establishment. But it is so corrupt, and there's always a motive behind it, and there's a nefarious motive behind it. And you don't get that, on established channel networks, regrettably. So even when you watch Hannity, Hannity will tell you, oh, the lawyers of President Trump are doing really well. He's friends with Jay Sekulow. I am too. He's a nice guy. He's a religious rights lawyer. But he shouldn't be defending the president. He's not a criminal defense lawyer. The president's getting terrible representation. Absolutely terrible. He should fire his own lawyers, too, and get new lawyers outside of Washington, outside of the swamp, outside of people that are afraid there's going to be blowback that will affect their career. Because right now we're fighting for the country. Our founding fathers pledged their fortunes, their sacred honor, risked their lives to form a new nation. And today, particularly lawyers in the legal profession, won't risk their next meal from a lobbyist or in any way put their career in jeopardy because of a principle. And frankly, again, I'm selling myself, but I have to. I'm the only lawyer that'll do that. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I'm insane to do that. But I believe in my heart that you have to risk everything for this country. And if not, it'll be gone very shortly. So please go to freedomwatchusa.org. Join our citizen army.
And Larry, I want to just give you an opportunity to speak to some of the lawyers that do listen to Patriot Radio. We have a lot of good, solid, conservative, constitutional lawyers that listen. And I'm a lawyer myself. And there are very few that do stick their necks out on the line like we do. There really are. But what would be your message to some of those that are kind of on the fence right now and might be getting kind of the inkling to get involved?
Well, please contact me. Let's get together. Let's form a vast right-wing conspiracy. I'm joking. But yes, we need to band together because, we're fighting for the heart and soul of our country. And I didn't mean to say I was the only one, but I don't see a lot of people putting their foot forward. So contact me, go to our website, contact me, make a comment on the petition, Give me your phone number, your contact information, and let's put together a team, and let's defend this president to the very last.
So what other things are happening out there that our listeners may not know about that they should know about? We talked briefly about the NSA, and our listeners are very well aware of the rampant spying out there. But what else is out there that they might not know about that's coming to the fore right now?
Well, I mean, we don't know exactly what's coming to the fore. We've seen what bad stuff has come to the fore already. But I would say that there is a deep state. There's an Obama-Clinton deep state. It exists primarily in the intelligence agencies. That is condoned, frankly, by people like Mike Pompeo, who ran the CIA, who now wants to be Secretary of State. It was reported today he's even consulting with Hillary Clinton on his Senate confirmation. I mean, can you believe that? It's the National Football League, the American Conference, the National Conference. The establishment takes care of itself. Go to Washington, D.C. See the buildings that are going up all over the place. The place continues to expand. It's never had a recession. Politicians, judges, lawyers are stuffing money into their pocket, hand over fist. And there are bribes that do occur in the judicial system. Don't kid yourself. And this country has become Sodom and Gomorrah. It has become like ancient Rome and ancient Greece. It has become morally and ethically and legally corrupt to the core. And that's what's coming, the end of this country. It's coming. Maybe it'll take 10 to 15, 20 years, but it's coming unless it's stopped right now. And this president and people like yourself and me at Freedom Watch and our other compatriots, we're the only ones that can stop it peacefully and legally. And if it doesn't stop peacefully and legally, there will be militia in the streets. See, by the way, there's nothing wrong with being a militia member in the Second Amendment. You can bear arms and be a militia, so I'm not saying anything disparaging about that. But you know what? These people are very, very, I should say, they are very patriotic people, most of them, okay? And they remember what happened in 1776, and they remember that the colonialists had no choice but to bear arms and to use those arms against the federal government. And I will do my best to prevent that from happening. But I do believe that they will say to themselves, as the Founding Fathers did, we have to resort to violence to restore this nation to a free nation. In fact, Jefferson predicted that. He predicted that, every other generation we would have to spill blood. And I don't want to see that, but I do believe it's coming.
And I think that a lot of us are seeing it, and a lot of people are looking at that and what do we do about it? And you've given several ideas, especially going to your website to get involved and to try to stop this before it's too late. And I really appreciate everything that you're doing. I appreciate all of the hits that you've taken and being out front, but it's changing things and it's stopping some of these things that they're trying to do. And that's what we need to do. You shouldn't be doing it alone. There should be a group of Americans that are rallying together right now that love freedom and liberty, that are willing to stand up and do that. So thank you on behalf of everybody out here in Patriot Radio Land in Eastern Washington, North Idaho, and Northeast Oregon.
It's my pleasure. Thank you. God bless.
God bless. Larry Klayman, freedomwatchusa.org, freedomwatchusa.org. And I want to have him back on again because he was talking about a lot of the things that we've been talking about on the show, but he's actually doing it. He's actually doing it. So make sure you go to freedomwatchusa.org, sign the petition. I'm doing it right. I was actually doing it as he was talking on the radio. Signing the petition right now. That we're really in a battle for the heart and soul of the country, battle for freedom. I mean, it really is getting that stark. And clearly, these people are willing to raid the president's lawyer's office, where attorney-client privileged material is there in violation of rules of professional conduct, in violation of the law. Do you honestly think, if they're willing to do that to the President of the United States, that they're not willing to do that to us? Of course they're willing to do it to us. And in some cases, like Larry Klayman was talking about, they already are doing it to us. They have the NSA. rulings against the NSA that is collecting information, that's attorney-client privilege, collecting information without a warrant. Now, we've stopped some of it, like, with banning Stingray devices without a warrant here in Washington State. But you still have many other avenues that are being used. People being put on terrorist watch lists merely because they believe the Constitution means what it says. In these fusion centers here locally. We wonder who is being put on these lists. Are they being put on there because the Southern Poverty Law Center says so? I mean, look at how they portrayed Larry Klayman. He's one of the greatest freedom fighters in America. This is why I wanted you to pay attention to today's show, because, I mean, we're at a turning point of history, whether you realize it or not, and all of us together have a choice to make at this moment in history. Regardless of what's happening in the South China Sea, regardless of what's happening with the showdown in the Mediterranean, what's happening in this country, this beacon of freedom, that the left, the socialists, are so bent on their agenda to destroy the Constitution and destroy the President of the United States that they are willing to do anything, even if it's against the Constitution and the law, and sometimes especially because it's against the Constitution and the law. Go to Freedom Watch. Let's give Larry Klayman some love here from the great inland Northwest and Patriot Radio land. Let's stand up, folks. Now is the time to stand up. This is Matt Shea. Thank you very much for listening to me today. May God bless all of you. May he make this generation the greatest one.